Now, an investigation by the UK's national broadcaster, the BBC, has reportedly found significant discrepancies in the presidential election result in one state in Nigeria. As you know, the two defeated candidates in that presidential ballot recently launched legal action challenging the outcome after the APC candidate Bola Tinubu was declared the winner and is now president-elect. Well, a BBC investigation has reportedly found evidence suggesting that some results in the key battleground state of Rivers may have been manipulated. A BBC team said they tallied the votes from more than 6,000 polling stations in Rivers State, where the official result gave a clear majority to Mr. Tinubu, and that their investigation shows that Mr. Tinubu's total was significantly inflated, while the Labour Party candidate Peter Obi's tally was reduced. So what should we make of this BBC investigation? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by Rive's political editor and director of news, Sumner Samba. Good to see you, Sumner.
Thank you so much, Charles.
So tell us more about what the BBC has uncovered. They seem to have found evidence that the presidential election results in Rivers State may have been manipulated.
Yeah, and I would say there's nothing new about that. We saw domestic observers like Yaga Africa pointing out to this. And then there was also a publication by Premium Times which adduced to some of the things that the BBC says it has found out. And it's nothing really new. Well, these issues are before the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal. Nonetheless, we've always known that since 1999, when we return to democracy, elections in River State have always been controversial. And my God, in 2007, the results that came out from that state, I mean, were the talk of town.
Breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere, the same thing until 2011 when we started, you know, cleaning up the system, and then gradually, I mean, results not only from Rivers, but from other parts of the country. But I can tell you that the discoveries by the BBC, especially in Obiakpo local government area, it's not so distant from what a lot of people have said. And if you know that during the election period, Professor Edias, who was the state's chief coalition officer for the presidential election, which is called SCOPE, the state coalition officer for the presidential election, had raised the issue and saying that, look, there was even a threat to his own life because of the allegations that he had manipulated the election. But he said no. The allegations of, you know, this, you know, tampering of election results actually happened at the polling units and then local government units allegedly, and that a lot of people are accusing him falsely that they should go down and actually find out what happened. And some of these political parties actually could not fully understand the mathematics that took place in River State, because I mean, for the APC to come first at the presidential election in River State speaks a lot of volumes, because we know that the candidate was not so much popular in that part of the country. So, I mean, it's elicited a lot of mixed reactions. That state has always been a PDP state. And then the Labour Party was also gaining popularity among some followers there. But when you come to the campaign grounds, you'll see that the Labour Party actually lost grounds in terms of the turnout of people that came for the campaigns. And of course, you know, there were state-sanctioned things here and there, despite that Governor Nyesom Wike had offered some support to Peter Obi when he went to campaign there. He couldn't fill stadium, the Liberation Stadium, which is now known as Yakubu Gowon Stadium there. But in all, there's still a lot to be unraveled, and I can tell you that it's left for the judiciary to come straight. Sure. But of course, those who have petitioned will also have to prove. And so the onus is on those who have gone to court to prove indeed that those votes were tampered with, and then of course it's left for the courts to actually accept.
Sure, but in terms of looking at the methodology that was used by the BBC to arrive at this conclusion that they've arrived at, basically after tallying all the results from the sheets that were available and comparing those to the officially declared results by INEC, they found a very large discrepancy, and that Bola Tinubu's votes had gone up by more than 100,000, whereas those of Peter Obi had fallen by over 50,000, which appeared to show quite a big discrepancy.
Yes, indeed. Those challenges were there because of, there's what is called the parallel voter tabulation by some NGOs and all of that, election monitoring organizations. Now, in the PVT, you will discover that there were lots of NGOs who had, observers at several polling units. And then, of course, you also had the political parties having their party agents and all of that. But, Charles, do you know why the elections in Rivers will always be controversial? Because of the terrain. There are some areas geographically within Rivers State that electoral officials don't go to.
Yeah,
not because they don't want to go to, but because of the terrain.
Yeah.
And in 2003, 2007, there were instances where INEC officials were brought into the middle of the sea and told to either want to disappear if they go forward, or they should just go back to Port Harcourt City in safety. And of course, some of them had to take the option of going back to Port Harcourt City. Yeah. And when the results came out, I mean, you needed to see all the results coming out from those localities. There are some places that even policemen can't go to. I mean, this happens in several societies, those dark zones where elections are not held, and then you see results being brought out. But the good thing about this is that we had this voting machine, beavers, and of course, if you follow what happened at the Supreme Court with the Oshun case, and the Adeli case emergence as, having got his verdict fully now, there will be a lot to prove at the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal. That's why I'm being careful not to get into certain discussions, because these issues are in court. Yeah. And when the Premium Times report came out, for example, and these issues had to be placed before the electoral body, INEC, they simply said that they can't comment on it because it's before the tribunal. Yeah. But looking at some of the ways the BBC report went, I will say that they did a great job, just like Yaga Africa, just like Premium Time, because, I mean, they placed the results side by side with the parallel voter tabulation, and alongside what some of the, party agents had brought back, and then from the realities on ground there. And you could see that, look, when they call some of the polling INEC officials to want to cross-check some of those documents with them, the election results, some of them were not willing to actually say they author those results. And if you go to the INEC website, as I'm speaking with you, Charles, you'll see where some things are written in biros and all of that.
Things cancelled out.
Cancelled out. Some, you just see the collation officer writing that, look, there was problem in this. So no figures attached. No collation paper, so I mean, it's a challenge.
But based on that, Sumner, because you have a lot of experience in these matters, you followed the elections and so on in this country. What accounts for this discrepancy? Was it incompetence, was it sloppiness, or something more insidious in your assessment?
Well, it has to do with the human mind, actually. A lot of people don't want a situation where the system works, where people come out to vote and then their votes count. That's why we've heard the slogan, one man, one vote, for a long period of time. The challenges of logistics too actually create this sort of atmosphere in a situation whereby for River State, and I'll go back to that, because of the terrain, you have to use boats on waterways. You would have to get to some areas, apart from the bigger boats, you have to go with smaller boats and all of that. And you go to some areas, by daytime, it's already looking like midnight because it's a rainforest zone and all of that. And
yeah, but the point is that they're talking about the results that were given.
Yes.
You see what I mean? So basically they're saying, we looked at this and we looked at that, and it didn't match.
Yeah.
So what do you think was behind that?
Yeah, I mean, in one way or the other, there could have been some tampering, and that's why it's left for the court to actually decide.
Yeah.
If people tampered with it, the evidence will be before everyone, because the Supreme Court has said that the only device that you can use to know whether an election was tampered with or not is the beavers, because the beavers machine accredited people. Sure. So if you said there was overvoting, the beavers would have to show that there was overvoting, because it will tell you the number of people who voted and those who are left out. Right. And for these results that were tampered with, if you go to the Rive website by INEC, you will discover that some of these things that were supposed to have been posted were not posted on time. And when it gets to the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal, people will have to prove beyond reasonable doubt, because it's a butt of jokes. Look at what Governor Badaru said during the President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu's visit to Port Harcourt, where Wike hosted. He said Wike was so much good at mathematics that, I mean, we who have been tabulating election results for a long period of time would have to come and learn from him.
I like
that sent a lot of signal and shivers, saying that, look, it looked like something actually happened that needs to be explained to everyone.
That's a very interesting
But it will be left for the courts, because you need to provide evidence, and the governing party actually went campaigning everywhere in every part of the country. And considering the drama that happened in the main opposition PDP, we already knew that Rive's result was going to be affected in one way or the other. But for the PDP to lose to the APC there, and for the Labour Party to lose to the APC there,
it raises questions.
Yeah, it raises a whole lot of questions.
So let me ask you this, because you made the very important point of the fact that this is in the courts. So let's kind of park that. But as you know, Western governments place a lot of premium on the investigations of their upper crust media organizations and tend to act on those investigations. Could this affect the legitimacy of Bola Tinubu's presidency in the eyes of Western governments such as the UK?
Yeah, Charles, you and I know that, I mean, having worked with foreign media everywhere, these foreign governments actually do a debrief of some of their journalists when they come to third world countries to actually cover elections and all of that. It's unfortunate that we, as a developing country, we don't do that, but these guys actually do that. And these are some of the things that are coming out now to show you the momentum that the Western world is trying to place ahead of the inauguration. This is not just coming out there. It's a grand design to actually say, look, we do not fully understand what has happened during the last election. Our media outlets are doing some investigation. We are also staying back a bit from embracing fully the president-elect. But is this going to stop the president-elect from assuming power? No. Is this going to also affect his international relations? Yes, there's a tendency, because he's trying to look for legitimacy in the eyes of the international community. And you would have seen that if the president-elect is out of the country now with less than 2 weeks to the inauguration, there should have been these heightened expectations, you know, him being in Paris or London or wherever he is. But, you know, there have been this orchestrated work by the president-elect too, as he goes around the world preparing to come take over power. And so the mood is that of, you know, a cat and mouse game between the international community and the president-elect. But I can tell you, with China, Russia, the BRICS countries also trying to look for new partners and all of that, the Western world also being careful. That's why you could see America taking its time to congratulate Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The French had to eventually do that, and then, of course, the British. They are also being careful, because if they don't do that and the Russians and the Chinese come and Bola Ahmed Tinubu embraces them on time, it will actually spoil the meal for them too. So it's a very difficult and delicate situation.
Dance
the geopolitics of it globally is one that, if Tinubu is smart enough, he'll be able to embrace. Because if the West are so interested in all these election matters, he will quickly run to the other guys who are not so much interested in election and human rights issues, but in terms of growing the economy, infrastructure, and all of that. So let's be careful not to allow the West to actually drive the narrative of the Nigerian elections. But that doesn't mean that the right questions should not be asked and the judiciary shouldn't do its job.
Samna, thank you very much indeed. Samna Sambo is a